Hi, I'm Tina Sims, a member of the research staff at the Michael and Susan Dell Center for Advancement of Healthy Living and the CATCH program. The center is an affiliate of the University of Texas School of Public Health and is based in Austin. The purpose of this short video is to show you how to accurately measure heights and weights using stadiometers and digital scales. Taking measurements is fairly easy. However, there are a few techniques to keep in mind when doing so. So over the next several minutes, I'll show you how to properly use a digital scale and stadiometer to take measurements, all while respecting the privacy and confidentiality of the students being measured. The first thing to keep in mind when we're getting ready to do measurements is, of course, have all the proper equipment. So what we need is a stadiometer to measure heights, a digital scale to measure weights, recording forms to document the measurements, and quality control forms. It's also pretty helpful to have a clipboard and anything to write with, preferably a pencil. Okay? Now, another thing we need to do ahead of time is to check the accuracy of the scales. This will ensure that we get precise measurements. So it's important to check the accuracy at the range of weights for the population we'll be measuring. So for example, if we're going to be measuring elementary school students, we probably want to check the accuracy up to at least 200 pounds. Okay. So let's start by doing that. Okay? Okay, yep, let's make sure the scale is on. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use pounds. And so it's set for pounds. I'm going to take 50 pounds and place them on the scale. All right? I'm going to take a look at my reading, and it says 50 pounds, which is great. It's accurate at 50 pounds. Now let's do 100 pounds, all right? Now, we got to do this kind of quickly because once we place a certain amount of weight on the scale, it'll lock in place and it won't register anything else that you add to that weight. So I'm going to place my 50 pounds on the scale first, and then you place yours right on top of mine, okay? And be careful when you're lifting the weights. Bend down, lift with the legs, and don't stoop like this and lift with your back because we don't want anyone getting hurt. Ready?
Ready.
Okay. All right, now the scale's reading 100 pounds, so we know it's accurate at 100 pounds. Same thing when you're taking the weights off, bend the legs, lift with the legs. Okay, so we were fortunate. We had the scale accurate at 50 pounds and then 100 pounds, which is really good. But there is an allowable variance, and that's 0.5 pounds. And so what that means is if we put 100 pounds on the scale, it has to register between 99.5 pounds and 100.5 pounds. As long as it registers within there, the scale is considered accurate and we're good to go with the measurements. If it's outside of that range, then the scale is not accurate, and it's best to refer to the user's manual or contact the manufacturer directly to find out how to calibrate the scale, because that's what's going to have to happen. Now, we use pounds, but if you decide to use kilograms to weigh your students, the allowable variance will be 0.2 kilograms instead of 0.5 pounds. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay, so you ready to start doing heights and weights?
Let's do it.
Okay. Let's start with the stadiometer. Let's put this together first. Typically, it's going to come in some kind of case like this because it's kind of big and bulky. So let's get out the pieces. Okay. Okay. And we can lay it flat like this. There are a couple pieces that you want to make sure you have. This right here, the vertical ruler, and the L board. Sometimes it's called the headboard, but I'll just refer to it as the L board. Okay, it's not a lot of pieces to it, but you want to put it on its side like this. Pull these two levers out, and then extend the platform like that. Now these two pieces will have to catch just like that. Did you see that? Let me do it again. Catch just like that, and once this part hugs right there, you're going to lock it into place. Okay. Now you do the same thing with this one. lock it into place once it's caught. And then carefully just stand it up like this. Now, important thing to note, you always want to take your height and weight measurement on a flat surface. Now you see the stadiometer has a platform built into it, so that's nice and even. With a digital scale, it doesn't always, and so when we get to the scale, I'll show you what to do to make sure you get the flat surface. All right, now, can you hold this for me?
Yes.
Okay. Now this is important. There's going to be rulers on two sides of this vertical ruler. You want to make sure that the numbers match up with the right side. So you can see these numbers match up here and these numbers match up here. Okay. You don't want it like this. Numbers here, numbers here, numbers here. You're not going to get a good reading like that. Okay. So before we put that on for good, let's put the L board on the ruler. Now the L board has a screw that you can tighten and untighten because you're going to need to slide it up and down. So you just slide it on like that. Go ahead and tighten it once you get it on the ruler. And then let's pick this up and put it right there.
And I see there are two read here arrows. Which one will we be using?
Good question. Now, one of the things you need to pay attention to ahead of time is whether you're going to use the metric system or the English system. Now, the metric system, if we're going to measure with that, we're going to measure in centimeters to the nearest tenth of a centimeter. If we use the English system, we're going to use measurements in inches to the nearest 1/8 of an inch. So I kind of like to use centimeters. How you feel about that, okay?
Works for me.
Okay, so we're going to use the centimeters in this case. All right. So, ta-da, stadiometer. And I'll show you how to slide this up and down when it's time to bring in the students to take actual measurements. So that's easy enough. Now, the scale. Let's slide the stadiometer over a little bit and bring out the scale. Now, remember I mentioned about having a hard, level surface? Well, since this is a carpeted room, anytime you don't naturally have that hard, level surface, it's good to have a piece of board. This is a plywood board that we use. We actually carry it around wherever we go, just in case we need it. So we set that down and bring out the scale. Again, your scale is usually going to come in some kind of case like this because it's pretty heavy and sophisticated. All right. Okay. Now again, not a lot of pieces, not that difficult to put together. Okay. The only thing you need to do is plug in the adapter. And then can you insert it into the outlet, and I'll get the case out of the way. Okay. Now with the scale, you want to turn it on right here. And then we decided to use centimeters to measure the heights. And so let's stick with the metric system and let's use kilograms to measure the weights. So we want to make sure, of course, when the scale turns on that it reads 0. There's a kilogram pound button right here that you can toggle between the two. I'm going to click, make sure it's set to kilograms right there. And that's it for the scale. Very easy. Now this is the standard equipment that we use at the UT School of Public Health. But just keep in mind that other institutions use different kind of stadiometers, different kind of scales, and so be sure you take a look at their manufacturer's manual to make sure how you're assembling it is the correct way. So we're actually going to take some measurements in heights and weights right now. Now, something for us to keep in mind, those of us doing the measurements, is you want to wear comfortable clothing and shoes on the day of the measurements because we're going to be bending, reaching, moving around a lot, and you don't want clothing that's too restrictive. Also, you may want to create a checklist of all your equipment, like the stadiometer, the scale, the forms we'll be using, pencil, clipboard, just to make sure you have everything you need. All right?
Okay.
Okay, let's bring the students up now. Okay. Alrighty. So you guys know we're going to take your height and weight measurements, and so there are a few things I'm going to ask you to do to prepare for that. First thing is, if you can take your shoes off, and if you have anything in your pockets, we're going to need you to take those out of your pockets. It's a good idea to take whatever's in your pockets and put them in your shoes, and so that way they won't get lost. Okay. Something else I'm going to ask you to do is, if you've got a jacket on or anything outerwear on top of your shirt, if you can take that off. Thank you very much. And lastly, let's see, we're going to be measuring you, yep, from the top of your head. So if you've got anything on the top of your head or a ponytail, if you can take that out, that would help us out a lot. We want to be sure we get the accurate measurement, the most accurate measurement we can, and so that's going to be helpful. Okay, so we're going to start with India. Are you ready? Yes. Okay, and you two can just kind of step on back. Yeah, be careful not to trip over that. And then India, you can stand on the board right here with your back against the ruler. Exactly. And so you notice that we put the stadiometer in a place where India is not able to lean against the wall or to grab onto anything, because we want her to be able to stand straight up without doing any of those things. Okay, so can you hold these? These are the recording forms, and so there's a pencil right there and a clipboard. You may want to get one of each, because as I'm showing you how to take the measurement, once we actually read the measurement, if you can document it on the form, that would be really helpful. Okay, so the correct positioning on the stadiometer. If you can put the back of your heels against the board, your behind, and then your upper back, that would be really helpful. Okay, now, are you standing on the bottom of your pants, or your feet are flat on the floor?
They're flat on the floor.
Okay, very good. We want to make sure that they're not standing on the hem of their pants, because that's going to affect the height we measure. Okay, now, if you put your hands straight down, and actually let your hands hang, very good, and look straight forward, that's the correct positioning. Okay, so India's a little bit taller than I am, so to make sure I get an accurate reading, I'm going to use a little stool. Just step right here. Okay, so this way I can see the top of her head, which is key to the measurement. Okay. The position of the head is really important to get an accurate measurement. What we want to get is called a Frankfurt plane, all right? And so what this is, can I borrow your pencil? It's getting a horizontal straight line from the lower eye socket to the inner flap of the ear. And so a lot of times when you're new to this, it's easy to take a pencil to get that Frankfurt plane, okay? So I'm going to get kind of close to you with the pencil. It's not going to touch you, but keep your head straight, look straight ahead, and that's actually pretty good. Put your chin down just a teeny bit. Okay, very good. So you see the horizontal plane?
Yes. From
the lower eye socket to the flap right here?
Yes.
Okay, very good. And you can take that back. Okay, so try to be as still as possible. Look ahead. And put your chin down just a little bit. Okay, stop right there. And don't do it yet, but when I count to 3, I want you to take a deep breath in, stand straight and tall, and just hold it until I tell you to let it go, okay? After you take the breath, I'm actually going to lower the L board, which is above your head. It's going to rest on the top of your head. It's not going to hurt. It's not heavy. But hold your breath, and then we're going to take the measurement. I'll lift it back up and let you know you can breathe again, okay? Okay, so you ready? Okay, so, all right. 1, 2, 3. Deep breath up. Okay, Olivia, I'm going to loosen the L board. Make sure I have a 90-degree angle between the L board and the vertical board in the measurement. 164.2. All right, you can breathe again. Okay, and so we got it on the recording form? All right, and so that's it. Now you can step off, and actually let's give her the recording form to hold on to, because we're going to call you back to do your weight, and so it's easier for you to hold on to that rather than us keeping it and flipping through all the papers. Okay, so you can have a seat and wait until you're called again. So next is Abby, and I'll go ahead and take Abby's measurement, and then I'll let you practice on our third student. Okay, come on up, put your back to the ruler, up, stand flat on the platform. Okay, so make sure your heels, your bottom, and your upper back are touching the ruler. Very good. Okay, so can I borrow this again just to demonstrate again? I'm going to get the Frankfurt plane, and can you lower your chin just a little bit?
And what if I can't see that her head is in the correct position?
Right, because Abby's hair is over her ear, so it's hard to see the flap. It's best to ask the student to put the hair behind your ear. So can you do that? And it's anytime, for some reason, you can't take a measurement properly because of hair in the way or anything else that the student can control, it's best to give verbal instruction to the student. Now sometimes, particularly with the younger students, they may not be able to understand what you're asking them, even if you've asked them, 2 or 3 times in different ways. In that case, always, always, always ask the student's permission if it's okay if you put your hand on their chin to move their head, or if you can pull their hair behind their ear. Okay, you always want to get permission if you need to do that. Okay, so all right, now that we can see the ear, chin down a little bit more, teeny bit more. Okay, now look straight ahead, your arms hanging. Okay, you can take the pencil back. All right, I'm going to lower the L board on your head, but before I do, when I count to 3, if you stand straight and tall, okay? All right, looking ahead, you ready? 1, 2, 3, take a deep breath. Okay, and I'm lowering it. It's not gonna hurt. 163. Okay, and you can breathe now, and you can step off the platform. And let me give you your recording form. Okay, and you can hold on to that until we do the weights. All right, so you ready to try?
I'm ready to try. Okay, if you want to put your back to the ruler, heels all the way back. Make sure you're not standing on your pants. There we go. Arms nice and loose down at your side. Top of your back all the way to the... Thank you. If I can borrow the pencil.
Oh, yep.
Okay, look straight ahead. Oh, very good. Just hold right there. Okay, on the count of 3, take a nice deep breath for me. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to lower the L board, just going to touch the top of your head. Okay, 149. Okay, you can breathe and you can take a step off.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. And what you just did with Ron was exactly what you needed to do. Because he's a little bit shorter than we are, how you crouch down, that was perfect. Because the key is you want to be able to be at eye level with the L board and the ruler. So that worked out perfectly. Olivia, we've got the scale turned on, so we are ready to take the weights of the students that we just measured for their heights. Key thing to keep in mind, sometimes students are sensitive about their size, their weight, and so we want to put the scale reading in an area where they can't really see it, okay? So in this example, it'll be behind us because we'll be right here. And it's also important not to react to the student's weight. We don't want them to feel bad about themselves or, have them worry about what we're doing with the information or, any reason at all for them to be concerned about having their weight measured. So you ready?
Ready.
Okay. First student? Okay. And I will take your form. And so this is the form that we gave them. When they give it to you right before we do their weights, we want to make sure that they've still got their own form and they haven't been passing it around with their classmates or anything. And so once we've made sure that we've got the correct form, we can go ahead and take the measurement. Okay, so stand on the scale and kind of in the middle of the scale as much as possible. Okay, now can you put your hands at your sides, just straight down, and look straight ahead. And again, we've got the scale placed where it's not close to a wall, not close to a table, far enough where they can't reach and grab anything or lean against anything, okay? And so this is fairly quickly. So once you're up there, the scale locks. We'll take the measurement and you can step off, all right? And so you're done. So you can grab your shoes and your belongings, anything that you've taken off and put over there.
And what is the heaviest weight the scale will measure?
This particular scale goes up to 440 pounds. And so keep in mind, though, that if you're using different scales, different manufacturers, they may have different weight limits. So you want to be aware of what that is. Anytime a student weighs over the maximum limit that the scale weighs, you'll get an error message read. In that case, there's a comment section on the recording form. You can indicate, make a note of what happened, okay? As a matter of fact, if there's any kind of impediment in taking the weight or the height measurement, you'll note it on the recording form as well.
Okay.
We're ready for our next student. Okay, thank you. And if you can step up on the scale right in the center of it. All right, now just let your arms hang loosely by your side and look straight ahead. Perfect. And then we take the reading, document it on the recording form, and you can step off. Thank you. And you can get your shoes and any other belongings that you set aside. Would you like to do the next one?
I would.
Sure. Okay.
Next student. Okay, if you'll get up on the scale right in the middle. Now, if you'll turn and face straight forward for me. Stand nice and flat. Arms down to your side. Try not to wiggle. Okay, if you'll stand for 1 second. I've got your weight. And if you'll step down, you are good to go if you want to grab your belongings. Thank you.
Now that we've got all the heights and weights measured, we'll need to do a quality control. Usually we take 5% of the group that we're measuring and we remeasure them.
Okay. What if the student asks why we are measuring her again?
Well, we don't want them to think that it's anything that they've done wrong. So we explain to them that in order to check to make sure what we're doing is correct, that we're going to remeasure some of them again. Okay. Now the students should be selected randomly. However, if you select a student with any kind of impediment to getting an accurate measurement, like if they have a cast, we know that's going to add a little weight, or if they have something in their hair that they couldn't take off that would affect their height, we're going to remeasure them anyway because we don't want to exclude anybody, but it's important to measure or to randomly select another student as well to make sure that we've got 5% that we think we have actual accurate measurements for.
Okay.
An important thing to remember about doing the quality control group is you want to measure at least 5 students before you remeasure a same student for quality control purposes. Do you think you can take the measurements on your own?
Yes, this process is fairly simple. I believe I can do it on my own. However, I do have a few follow-up questions.
Okay.
What if a student doesn't want to remove an article of clothing or doesn't want to take down their hair?
Well, the first thing we would do is explain to the student why we're asking them to do this. And the reason we are is so that we can get the best measurement we can. So we don't want anything interfering with whether the weight or the height. Now, if they're still resistant to it, then that's okay. We'll take the measurement anyway, but we don't want to force the student to do anything he or she doesn't want to do. Now, sometimes students don't want to take the clothing off or their shoes off because they might be embarrassed about the condition of their clothing. So one way to prevent that is to let students know ahead of time, preferably the day before the measurement's going to be taken, what's going to be asked of them. So if we let them know that we're going to ask them to take off their shoes and take off their jacket or sweatshirt, they may be more likely to be more prepared to do that.
Also, does it make a difference whether or not you use the English or the metric system?
No, not really. But whatever system you choose to use, just be sure you use it consistently. You don't want to switch it up during the middle of your measurements. Now, if you use the English system, you're going to be measuring heights to the nearest 1/8 of an inch and weights to the nearest 1/10 of a pound. If you use the metric system, you're going to be measuring to the nearest 1/10 of a centimeter, and for the weights, 1/10 of a kilogram. Okay? There are a couple of tips that may be helpful. One, the recording forms that we use to document the weights and heights, if we can fill in as much information ahead of time, it'll save a lot of time. So on that form, there's information, there's the student's name, the school he or she attends, whatever we can put onto the form before we actually do the measurements saves a lot of time on the day of the measurements. Also, another tip is, for the younger kids, it's a good idea to demonstrate what we actually want them to do before we do it. For example, when we're doing height measurements and using the stadiometer and we ask them to take a deep breath, it's a good idea to actually step onto the platform of the stadiometer, back up to how we want them positioned, and take a deep breath, actually show them, and then release it. So sometimes the students see it visually and it gives them a better idea of what we're expecting from them. Also, confidentiality and privacy are key issues when taking measurements. We want to make sure that the students clearly understand that the information we're gathering is confidential. Also, don't react to the student's weight or height. We don't want them to be self-conscious or to feel embarrassed about anything that we're doing here. Okay?
I can do it.
Great.